Helix Discovery. And as was mentioned earlier, we're going to talk through the 2008 release. And as we talk through the 2008 release, first want to take a chance to just quickly go over the 2002 release, because this has been a busy year for the team with 2 releases throughout the year. So back in April, we did release the 2002 release. I won't go into detail on some of these features, but I'm guessing that some of our customers, folks on this call, are still possibly running 11.3 or older versions and looking at an upgrade. And so just wanted to highlight some of the things that are part of 2002, which you'll see in the application as version 12. Things such as the Outpost was added, new configurations with further PAM connectors, so beyond trust, centrify, and thycotic were added. And then some more items to help with resiliency and keeping Discovery up and running by adding further options to allow for online backups and database compaction. We also expanded our ability to integrate with REST APIs, notably showing the new feature of data sources where you can pull in static data from things such as REST APIs or remote file systems, in addition to the static data integration that had existed before with integrations of databases. So that's what we released back in the April timeframe, and now as of about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we released the latest release, which is 2008. And in between those releases and back to the middle of last year, we've been delivering quite a bit of content under the monthly TKU. And so those are releases that we put out every first Wednesday of every month. They're deployed to our SaaS customers on their development environments that first Wednesday of every month. And then the second Wednesday of every month, such as this week, we will deliver those to the production environments in SaaS. And so as you can see across what I've highlighted here, and I won't go into detail on many of these, we are putting out content across all the different pillars of your IT environment. So things such as cloud, storage, network, software, we're deploying, we're adding content across all those month over month. One item to highlight, though, in the right-hand column there, under the February to September, we did release the ability to now discover IBM Cloud. So further expanding our multi-cloud discovery beyond the Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and now adding IBM Cloud. So keep looking to future first Wednesday of every month, where you'll receive an email from myself highlighting what's new in that release. If you're not receiving those emails, we can follow up offline, and I can show you how to go about adding yourself to those communications. So getting to the main features of this 2008 release, this would be the main feature that we're going to talk about today and show a little bit of it in the application. So historically, when going to discover your AWS EC2 instances, as you can see there on the screen, the ability to do a cloud-based discovery run is interacting with the AWS APIs in order to pull in all of your different subscriptions beyond just EC2 instances, but it's interacting with the APIs. It's pulling in a lot of rich information from those APIs. But in order to discover what's actually running on those EC2 instances, you need to have the OS level access that you do when discovering things such as virtual machines or physical servers in your data center. And so those type of discovery scans rely upon existing protocols that you're familiar with in the data center, such as SSH, WMI, or REM query. And so in order to get that level of detail in your discovery runs of the cloud, you would have to then go and do a second discovery run using those protocols. And since those are IP based, as in your discovery appliance needs to have access to those EC2 instances, you're met with some difficulties sometimes when deploying to the cloud, such as that security is much tighter. As what we're hearing from our customers, as they're moving workloads to the cloud, it's an opportunity to take a much tighter security posture. And so getting a discovery appliance that is maybe living within the EC2 VPCs in order to discover those things There definitely needs to be an easier way to go about doing that. And so this feature allows you to more seamlessly discover your EC2 instances, because now you have the capabilities of discovering all of your EC2 instances as well as what's running on them with this single discovery run that I'm showing you here. And what it's actually doing, and I do have the R&D folks on the line to help, not only keep me honest, but answer more detailed technical questions, is the AWS Systems Manager is a full suite of tools that AWS is putting out there for you to manage in all your EC2 instances. And so it has this sessions manager API that we're now able to interact with, and more importantly, drive all of the patterns that we have and all that content run against your EC2 instance. So I'll show you what I mean in a demo here in a little bit, but the main important thing is that you're able to discover all the things that are running on your EC2 instance, as well as do it in a more secure fashion. Oops. And with unlocking that potential, we do realize that with customers deploying things to AWS, they're most likely going to run into duplicate IP space with all the different EC2 instances they're running, possibly using some templates that have the same overlapping private IP space. And so in order to ensure that we're capturing all those EC2 instances as unique server virtual machines in the cloud, we added this concept of a scope. You can see it down there on the right. And essentially what the scope is doing is allowing you to have a unique attribute so that you can start to have those overlapping IP ranges in your discovery system. Now, there is an option to turn this on in a transition mode. So as you look to start discovering overlapping IP space, you can set it into a transition mode so that you are not adding a bunch of new, quote unquote, new hosts, because now you have this concept of a scope. And even more importantly, if you're not scanning duplicate IP space, or if you're not scanning things via the SSM function, there's no need to set a scope. It's really there just for when you're going about scanning duplicate IP space. So now I'm going to attempt to flip over to my browser and show you. All right. Okay. Unless I hear a bunch of people come off mute and yell at me, I'm assuming you can now see Discovery running here. So this is a 2008 version of Discovery. You'll see in the application it is 12.1, so we still have the numeric value within the product, and then a lot of the marketing you'll see across all of BMC is the year.month. So I've done a couple different scans of AWS EC2, a couple different accounts actually. And so just want to show you what I was talking about earlier, where you can get some really good information from just the public APIs. And then I'll show you what you get by utilizing the SSM feature. So these are 3 EC2 instances that I've created. When you do an initial cloud scan without having SSM set up, you will get some really good information of, what type of VM it is, the location, some of the important subscription information, but you're not going to get an understanding of what software is running on your EC2 instance. You're not going to understand the relationships, the dependencies between all your different EC2 instances, or what it might depend upon outside of an EC2 instance. And so in order to go to the next level, you would have to do a normal SSH scan, for example. And so I'll show you what it looks like when doing a normal SSM scan now. Just to kind of show you real quick, I had that screenshot in there. So by default, we are going to have Systems Manager sessions enabled. And if you don't have Systems Manager client installed on your EC2 instance, it'll just skip over it. There are some prerequisites to get this up and running that we have documented. So your EC2 instance has to have an IAM role attached to it that has a few pertinent SSM permissions set up. So things such as the ability to start a session, and even more importantly, the ability to terminate a session so that Discovery is cleaning up after itself. So there is some setup to go through in order to get up and running. And so this was a discovery run that I did all within that one screen. And I now have 4 hosts that it was able to create. And these would be the 4 hosts that I have in my account that has SSM agent up and running, able to connect. And so this was able to be discovered all within that one single discovery run. So as you can see, it's a much easier way to get up and running with multi-cloud discovery. This has gotten a lot of good feedback from customers that have been dealing with their internal security teams on how to go about discovering things in the cloud. And we really like this approach. It's the first approach we've seen in the market of how to do discovery against something like SSM. And so we're looking to keep advancing our interactions with SSM to make the multi-cloud discovery easier to use, quicker to get up and running, and more secure. And I'll just show you real quick the concept of the scope real quick. So the scope can be set up within the admin. So in order to set up scope, you set up a single scope on a scanning appliance or an outpost, and then everything that's discovered with that appliance or that outpost is going to add that attribute of whatever scope you define. If I can just find it in here. So here's the scope transition mode that I was talking about, where you can go back, a one-time thing to go and set up the scope transition mode. And then here's where you would put in your scope. So it could be perhaps a name that's familiar to you of the data center that you're scanning, or a location. Maybe it's a New York scope, or any other identifiable thing that you want to use, because that'll be what makes those duplicate IP ranges unique at that point. And when you scan things via SSM, we're going to go ahead and add a scope for you by default, and it will use it'll use the unique VPC ID as the scope. I'll show you that to you real quick. So as you can see here, we added the unique name of the VPC for the scope. And so this would allow, if I'm scanning, think of a normal customer might have hundreds of different AWS accounts, and they might be using a lot of the same templates that have the same private IP space. And so this is key in order to fully discover your AWS EC2 environments without having any issues on the discovery side of duplicate IP space. So that was the quick walkthrough and show of the SSM. It really is, once you get the IAM roles configured and set up, it makes discovering your EC2 instances much easier and quicker to start to get that realization of the value of discovery, of understanding what's running on those servers, start to build application models, understanding uprange and downrange changes, and understand incidents better based on your deeper discovery of your EC2 instances. Go back to my presentation. All right. So on the right-hand side, just continue with the upgrade path that we had back in April that we talked through with the 2002 release. Again, 2008 is still on the CentOS OS. So if you're already on that, whether you're on 11.3 or already on the 2002 release, it's a streamlined upgrade process. If you're still on an older version on CentOS 6, it would be create a new appliance and do a backup and restore. Red Hat 7 shows up on these charts now because we do have a separate licensable product for Red Hat. So that's why that shows up there. Within the notes, it does mention that is a separate licensed product, but within one picture, you can see all the different options in order to do an upgrade. You'll get a copy of these slides, so these will be clickable hyperlinks for you, and you'll be able to dig through the release notes, the same release notes that I would have emailed about 3-4 weeks ago when we actually had the release, the GA date. And then further on, just the ongoing TKU content documentation landing site that we have, Configopedia. And then the BMC community. So back in the May or June timeframe when the team started doing development on this release, after the release of 2002, we opened up a pre-release community. And this is an area where we put out release beta builds of the product for you to test against pre-release builds. And so we're going to continue to do that. So the team will be starting on the next version of Discovery and start to build out new features. And we would appreciate anyone who's interested to reach out to me, because I'd love to keep adding more of you to that pre-release community so you can get a chance to test things out before they're GA. And then at the very bottom, the most important link is where to go about getting the latest release. It's also the place where you go to download the TKU every month, the OSU updates. And so the EPD site is, of course, updated with the latest builds of 2008. So a couple things that we went over. I don't know if there's been any questions in the chat. Just pull that up, see if there were. I don't see any
questions in the chat.
Okay.
Greg?
All right. I guess we can open it up to anyone. I don't know if they're able to go on mute or not, but
yeah, everybody can go on mute and unmute themselves and ask questions if needed.
Okay.
For people who joined late, this session is recorded as well, as Greg said, and I will be posting the link on communities later this week. Again, if any questions, please do unmute yourself.
Well, we had a lot of questions back on the 2002 webinar, so maybe they've gotten all the questions out.
Okay.
Right. Well, I
like that.
We'll wait for the posting and recording. Maybe some folks can post questions there as well.
Yes, certainly. They can certainly do that. Okay. Thank you, Greg, for this presentation. Thank you all for joining, and see you next time. Bye.